I respect it. This is going to be cool. This is going to be very cool. So the two master players, okay? The two master players play off here. And
Head to head.
it's a pity that I have to go head to head. It's always bad because there has to be a loser. Even if these two are the best of the best, one of them has to fall out here no matter what. So it's probably going to be very close. That's my prediction. We've had 3 games so far between you and I, and all 3 of them were 3-0s throughout this weekend.
Oh
so...
yeah. Will this be another one? That would be interesting. Imagine if all of the series Voodoo cast this weekend would be clean 3-0s. That is sort of satisfying, although it does mean less games for us to count.
I mean, it gives us a lot of downtime in between. I am not gonna complain, but at the same time, I kind of want to stretch this one out because I'm not yet ready to end this series.
It is going to be a very big one, very intense one. And here we are loading into the first game. Spellingbee is bringing not the first obvious blue coin choice here, but going for... Oh, never mind, he is. I, for some reason, saw that reversed.
No, me too,
yes,
actually.
it is. Yeah, the loading screen looked a bit funny there. But yeah, Pajabol bringing Symbiosis on a red coin. Flex deck can go on either. On the other hand, Spellingbee, of course, does bring the obvious blue coin list, which is the Erendite developing high pressure monster list, now aiming to get that Brew's Ritual out of the way. Some Deathwish bronzes still in hand, which you do not want to see, which is why the Foglet is going back and can find a tribute there with the Royal Decree.
I mean, you really can't complain. This monster stratagem remains one of the strongest stratagems for me, and a good reason in and of itself to go first. You're gonna see that beautiful Brewer's Ritual play, and it's gonna be activated immediately. So its Deathwish can go out twice, thinning the deck and giving massive tempo to Spellingbee here.
Yeah, and also nice to have that one Succubus in hand, making sure that you don't accidentally get thin 2 of them into the graveyard, because you need to have one in your hand for now. AQ also in hand here. Potential targets would be Dagon later on. Let me see how many Deathwish bronzes there actually are for Spellingbee to bring out here in round 1. I don't think AQ will be a target on Tribute, because there are not that many Deathwish bronzes.
We do see Orquin being played on Pajabol's end, setting up all the Naiads for later. Also going to give him way more tempo in round 1 with those Treants being bigger. And yeah, the Death Wish, well, Brewis has been triggered with the Endrega Warrior. We already see a pretty large point gap here on Spellingbee's end. Yeah, I think he's pretty satisfied with his round 1 hand. Pajabol, on the other hand, has a few cards in hand he might wanted to save for later, but Spring Equinox being played there is pretty nice, as you're gonna get double value out of it.
Yep, as you said, Tia, nice point gap for Spellingbee, but that Equinox is coming in hot, especially being used on that Seer. Pajabol gets to play it twice, has it in the graveyard now to be put back with Elisa. And be very nice, enabling that Simlas for later, and okay, really getting the point gap back up again. Meanwhile, Spellingbee needs to make sure he's not running out of juice. Keep in mind that his goal, of course, will be to develop the Erendite. Pajabol, on the other hand, will ideally try to stop that from happening.
That is very true. Erendite's setup here is pretty crucial, but Karen coming down there, having immunity, so it's protected by Heat Wave, and Spellingbee doesn't really have to worry about any removal here. Yeah, looking very good for him. Pajabol, on the other hand, like you said, caught up pretty quickly and doesn't really have to spend a lot to stay on par here with Spellingbee's round 1 tempo.
Yep, and that is exactly right. Spellingbee going ahead here to use leader charges, and the Succubus is activated and is being triggered currently. The ball is in Pajabol's court again, fairly high tempo here. But the natures keep on coming down as Fog is tutoring out a very nice Tempest that now has these nature-tagged bronze weather cards attached to it. So very nice to get the thinning out for later rounds. And now Spellingbee does have 2 rows filled with units, so they do get good value, and that kind of seals the deal. The point gap is too big, and Spellingbee has to take the loss here on even.
Yeah, you really don't want to see that if you are Spellingbee, and I can just appreciate how fast these games are going. Both players knowing exactly what they want out of these matchups, experienced enough to not really take any time to think. Alright, so we're going into round 2 here now. A lot of nice setup for both players. Alyssa is able to shuffle back some cards for Simlas. Gord's already drawn there. We just don't want another Isengrim Council brick like we saw earlier today, so you have to be kind of careful how much you thin.
That's right. No tomes involved just yet, so that helps Pajabol by not overthinning, of course. But yeah, a really beautiful hand, as you said. Nice setup here for Pajabol happening. If Pajabol really wants to, and things are looking a little bit grim for Spellingbee, Pajabol could really decide to push here because the setup is there. No Dagon for Spellingbee. Does have the Araka's Queen combo with Detlef on the other hand.
We do see that Isengrim Council coming out here already. The Seer being placed. Very interesting. Are we seeing a push here? Oh, did you even see that card being played? Because I didn't.
That was so fast, and I believe that was the heat wave taking down the Seer, because we know what happens when the Equinox goes on the Seer. We saw it in round 1. I think that's what Spellingbee immediately had to shut down. No thoughts. Fastest heat wave in the West. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, very interesting. Let's see. Pajabol, are you deterred at all, or are we going all out here? We have Simlas set up now, so Simlas is ready to go. Is Pajabol ever hoping Spellingbee hasn't drawn his cards yet? I mean, now is the best time to assume that he perhaps didn't. And I can see why you would consider pushing here.
Yeah, this is nice. The Bountiful Harvest is still not too committal. So as you said, Pajabol can then assess the situation and see if he really wants to go for it and play the Simlas. For now, the carryover boost, it did go on Simlas, so it's potential for Pajabol to save all this for round 3. But perhaps the time is now with a really, really good hand to sort of finish the deal, because there's not much that Pajabol can draw that makes this round better, or a longer round better. And this is kind of where all of Pajabol's points is in the hand currently. So I could definitely see Pajabol wanting to play them out. But of course, his AQ will be big. Look at this Erendite currently. Not too tall, and also not in Spellingbee's hand.
Yeah, we see that pass coming through. It's a sneaky one, because now there isn't an option to consume the Arachas Queen, triggering its Death Wish and bringing out yet another card there. So, well played. Now, Heatwave doesn't need to be wasted just yet. Instead, it can be played on something else entirely. And Pajabol's hand is looking great. I think both players are pretty happy with the setup here, but I feel like Pajabol still has a lot of his win cons remaining. Yeah, I don't know about this situation. Okay.
That Heatwave looking good right now.
Yeah.
There it is, yeah. As you said, the Heatwave was now able to go on a completely different target, and Dagon is probably the target that Pajabol was waiting for here as well. Going for the Naiad with the infused nature category here to set up the board before all of those Equinoxes are going to start coming down. Not much that Spellingbee can do, but decides to take the Erendite really fast there. It is one of the better targets to take down now. That Erendite's not going to do too much later in the round.
Yeah, and now Pajabol is in a position where he can play uninteractively, essentially guaranteed to an extent. He doesn't really have to worry about anything interrupting his setup here. And like we can see, Harold Gord is already guaranteed to be boosted, basically by its maximum amount. Now it's just a game of who can build the most points with the current setup they have accumulated.
Alright, here are the Equinoxes, nothing threatening those, and as we can see, Spellingbee decided, alright, you found the Simla, so that means the game is over.
I told you, I have a feeling these players have scrimmed these games so many times that they already know exactly when they're winning and when they are losing, and yeah, this was, I feel like this is muscle memory at this point for most of them.
Yeah, and unfortunately a lot was sealed the moment that Spellingbee did not win that round or lost the round essentially on even first one, and that was just a really, really great spot for Pajabol to be in afterwards. But of course we have more games to come and the coins will be flipped now. Blue coin will be Pajabol, while Spellingbee, of course, will respond with the red coin. Perhaps we're going to see some Northern Realms action from Spellingbee in the last one, and from Pajabol on the other hand, well, blue coin could be Araka's. Never mind, it was actually banned, wasn't it? From Pajabol. I think.
Blue coin, okay.
Yes, it was banned. So
yeah.
no Araka's swarm allowed. So for Pajabol, it's going to then be either Sign Ritual or off.
And I think they're already in. Here we go. We're going into the next game already. We see Paya going with his Urson Ritual list here on blue coin. Spellingbee going with his Northern Realms list on red coin. Of course, the popular choice for that list, as it does lack tempo round one.
Yeah, not that many options of control either, so that might mean that Pajabol gets to save that Melusine, have her take for a long time, save the Knut and Sigvold from destruction. But Spellingbee could, of course, create something useful and has some locks to play, as well as there is no defender in Paya's list. Doesn't need a Purify to use that Margarita on a Sigvold, for example. So, yeah, we'll see.
Well, blue here is already deciding. Let's take a look. What are we doing here, Pajabol? We're going setting up Maxi. Makes sense.
Yeah. Temple coming down here are the three options that Spellingbee can choose from first. And then going to pull that and Sayus after these choices are made.
A lot of spicy options over there.
Yeah. Let's see what was created here. Shawnee, Ildiko as well. The king, whose name I cannot remember currently. Veraxis. There we go.
Don't worry, there are many kings. I always confuse them with Jock from Syndicate.
Oh yes, true.
They have the same look. Alright, so the obvious choice. I see we're probably setting up Melusine here. We have the boat ready to go, Maxi as well. Does it survive? I would love to see a world where Anzis is played preemptively to just get rid of Melusine. Maybe not, but one can always hope. You do have the squirrel in hand, so it would be pretty funny.
Yeah, I think once that Melusine enters graveyard territory is when that squirrel is going to come down. Heatwave, really fast plays from these. Both of the players, I think you're right, Dia, in saying that they know exactly what they're doing, they know exactly how to pilot it and what the next move will be and how to react in certain situations. But yeah, essentially Pajabol is saying that the Muta Generator is still too much value and does not allow Spellingbee to continue building that carryover for late game.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Muta Generator is always an automatic Heatwave. It's like half the win con, right? You've got the temple and then you have the Muta Generator set up, and once that is disrupted, you are lacking a lot of carryover you could have gotten. Yeah, it's kind of like a 0-point play actually. It's really slow if it gets Heatwaved.
Alright, so yeah, Squirrel coming down pretty early here, but deciding that the target is good enough. Yeah, I wonder what will be done about the Melusine, because that sort of opens up a resurrection and purify options for Pajabol.
That is very true. Pajabol going into the next round, winning by a long shot, now has round control and the ability to abuse that position however way he wishes to. I mean, I guess with Igni still being a removal option, I can see a world in which Melusine is removed later. It's just that, yeah, you have the option of resuscitating, whatever, so many different cards.
Yeah, exactly. And then there is the threat of Sigvald and Knut, which is definitely something you do want to get rid of. You do have the Ansayas, you do have the Shoop potentially to get a lock from as well. So far, no Rune Mage for Spellingbee, so that Shoop is looking like it doesn't get every single option yet. But maybe Spellingbee can find a Rune Mage going into round 3. And nice little carryover card here for Spellingbee to put the boost on, and it looked like it went on the Priestess.
Pajabol just passing on 8 cards. That means he is exceptionally happy with his hand, and he is very happy to just take this long round 3 with last say. This is going to be interesting. I do want to see these lists battle out in a long round. I guess it depends how well you can disrupt Pajabol's cards, because Northern Realms now has the ability to just play cards as win conditions on their own, really. I mean, you're going to set up that Anzi's with a shield, potentially. You have Avalanche, which has immunity. Shoop can be basically anything you want it to be. Yeah, I guess it lies here in Spellingbee's hands, how he is going to go into disrupting the Skellige setup.
Yeah, sort of limited ways, but the Margarita is a nice find, along with ideally the Shoop lock. No Rune Mage has been found, and there is also no neutral tutor for Spellingbee to go ahead and find it, so a little bit unreliable in terms of what the Shoop will create. So perhaps it's a lock, perhaps it's not. We'll see. I'm just going to go ahead and say Pajabol found the perfect hand here. It is looking juicy. It's looking good. Yeah. There's nothing missing that I can see here. So that maxi in round 1 was pretty nice, I think.
Absolutely. Very nice draws from both players here. We do see Spellingbee opting to draw into Shawnee there with his leader ability. He still has a few charges left, so very good position for him. It guarantees him a bunch of consistency as well. Unfortunately, I don't believe he can draw into Rune Mage, as it is not a Northern Realms card.
And chat also reminded me that there is a Fukusia still in Pajabol's deck, and while it's true that it's not a nice card to miss, you do have the Sigdrifas right for that one-time Melusine, or yeah, potential Ansayas damage target resurrection, which is nice. But yeah, Fukusia is missing there as well, so perhaps kind of even with Spellingbee's Rune Mage also not existing in this hand.
Agreed. I mean, you still have a bunch of options here. You do have Sigdrifas right, and you do have the Bride of the Sea. And if you are pulling out Melusine and keeping it alive, you could set it up very nicely where you use Sigdrifas right a second time. Pajabol's still a bit careful here. Okay, we do see his first big commitment in the form of Svalbard, and he does get a worthy value, I'd say, out of it.
Yep, that Shawnee is almost gone, and now he's using the Herald Houndsnout to be able to trigger the Svalbard again. Spellingbee using this Margarita now, deciding that the Svalbard has to be locked. For now, no ways to actually trigger other than the leader, but still saying that it will be too much of a threat. And taking the lock there, saving the removal for something.
Yeah, a very well placed lock, and not really much you can do about something like that. Here we go. So we're going to start setting up this other engine, and potentially also Melusine next to it. It does depend. We are seeing these options coming out of the deck. Ildiku, interesting. Not a bad card to have.
Yep. Created from the temple will be useful, and here comes the first Martyrdom on the Sigvald. Of course, it will keep taking damage and transfer those damage points later into points. And Knut, on the other hand, is probably looking to come out soon, but that Inseus is there, and Pajabol is very much aware of that, of course. It's not going to be going anywhere, as that was the kind of the obvious target pulled from Temple.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 2 removal cards left here in Spellingbee's hand, or 2 obvious ones. Of course, Shoop is always something you can try and get, but without Rune Mage, you only have 3 options. You don't have that consistency or guaranteed pick of your choice. So, yeah, Spellingbee clearly waiting to get Melusine out, and waiting for Knut and Sigvald to both be on the board to do their thing.
Yep.
The question
Erland
is... Oh, yeah.
This is interesting. Erland coming down and immediately using the boost here to get the deck boost, being able to stall and not having to wait for the adrenaline, as now there is nothing from Pajabol that would take care of this super tall Erland. Alright, and Say is coming down there, immediately sniping the Knut. Sigdrifus Right is able to resurrect either the Knut or something like the Melusine.
I do respect it. You don't need immunity with Adelant right now, as you know that your card is going to be uncontested. Anzi's immediately being used to get rid of the threat. Now we do have Sigdrifus Right, like you mentioned. What is the option here? Are we going for Melusine?
I think it's gonna be really good still on this Sigvald. Which is the target, and leader charges can put the Knut down, of course, along with Herald Hounds. Now it's a little ping, so useful little self-wound engine here, still on the board. Now Knut will get his cooldown, continue to damage this Sigvald, and is really not going anywhere unless the Shoop does something about it and finds a lock.
I do respect the way Pajabol is playing. He's purposely trying to keep out of Igni range as well. Right now, his Knut is in no danger from being destroyed by something like Igni. And yeah, if he can keep this up, Spellingbee's gonna have a hard time removing the cards of his choice.
Alright, Viraxis has evolved a little bit and resets the order of this Ensei's very powerful thing.
Wow.
And now the Ensei is able to snipe that Knut one more time.
That is an incredible play. Wow, okay, well that changes everything. I want to go as far as say that once Spellingbee this game, potentially, it's way too early, obviously, to say, but being able to use Anzi's a second time is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot that Viraxis' name. Very rude of me, because he's a very, very powerful pick here for Spellingbee in the line of cards from Littlest Temple. But yeah, Shoop still is undecided on what to do, and on the other hand, the Sigvald is huge. It's been a long time since I've seen a Sigvald this big, which is quite fun to really see it not be removed by any heat waves or really heat waves or Ignis.
I really hope we see a RNG Shoop. I want Shoop to just steal something from the opponent's side of the board or anything along those lines. That would be pretty funny. Spellingbee still has the option though. He's gonna have to pick very carefully here, because even though he's ahead, yeah, there are some pretty powerful cards here in Pajabol's arsenal that he can still use.
Absolutely. Bride of the Sea still can resurrect a Martyrdom, and the Restore is definitely not going to be a bad card to go for either. Pajabol has to make sure that the points are maximized here before going ahead and deciding the order of what to play, but it does seem like the Martyrdom from the Bride is going to be the choice here on the Priest. And the Shoop currently. Maybe just playing it for value here. Going for Knight.
Alright, we see the Hunter. Oh no, sorry, misread that. It is the Knight, pure value card. And it's a lot. What are we ending up on here? We have a Restore. It does play for a substantial amount, but it's not enough.
I think you may have been right, Tia, in saying that the Viraxis reset could have been the game winner there for Spellingbee, as NR proves successful and manages to navigate dealing with Skellige in a long round, which is not easy.
No,
sure.
Absolutely not. We have both players now having brought through one of their lists. Spellingbee having failed to bring through his Death Wish list, and Pajabol his Urson Ritual. So, yeah, okay, we are getting our wish seal. It's not a 3-0 this time around. We get to watch these players in all of their glory. Now, we do have Spellingbee going ahead on Blue Coin again here. He has the option of bringing Death Wish again, or Nilfgaard. Are we thinking another Death Wish Blue Coin here, or what?
Absolutely. I think it's important for Spellingbee to get this deck through, and the way to do it is really from Blue Coin if you want to try and get as big of a chance as possible at growing your Erendite. And that Erendite can be super, super powerful. But yeah, you do want to be the person in control of the rounds, and that is done if you win round 1. Just easier to do from Blue Coin with that tribute, and you kind of have to utilize the Urn of Shadow. So I really don't think you want to queue this from Red Coin. Pajabol, on the other hand, any thoughts of what he might be bringing to the party here? AQ being banned and Nature's Gift having been off the books would be maybe the Red Coin choice here. Not sure.
Yeah, I can see that being the case. The thing is, Skellige really does rely on kind of doing its own thing. So unless you think that two kind of solitaire lists can sort of win against each other, I don't know. It does feel like Syndicate is more of the control-heavy list in the scenario, if you assume Spellingbee is bringing monsters. But yeah, I mean, this monster list has 2 forms of Purify. It kind of wants to be killed, as well as it's a pure Death Wish list, so really hard to counter actually, given the setup. It's really difficult. I would have liked a Nilfgaard list to face off against this Death Wish list and just slam locks everywhere, but yeah, this monster list is kind of a catch-22 in my opinion.
Yeah, that really makes sense. I'm wondering, the Imperial Formation is sort of flexible. It could go on either coin if Spellingbee wanted to do something unexpected. That would be the list to queue, but I'm not sure if Spellingbee really minds what this Nilfgaard goes up against, because indeed it is so sort of flexible. It has the locks, like you mentioned. It has the big value plays from the high-end gold provisions as well. Yeah.
I mean, it's not just us thinking about this. I saw both players queuing, and they stopped queuing as well for a second. So they're clearly considering this and thinking it over. Knowing Pajabol, he always, when I'm casting, he goes for the exact opposite list I assume he's gonna go for. And he likes playing mind games. But right now, Spellingbee's the one with the obvious monster choice you want to take through on blue. And I think Pajabol is just wondering, is it going to be Nilfgaard or monsters? Because the two are extremely different. Yeah, monsters doing a solitaire sort of thing, Nilfgaard being highly interactive with that soldier lineup. You know, you have Ramon with the Light Fiend Cavalry. I mean, we can take a look as well at the decks here. The options being just Overwhelming Hunger, like I said, and Imperial Formation with Triss, Rainfree, Igni, Volgafords, Lydia, absolute control heavy deck versus something entirely different.
Yeah, I'm wondering what Pajabol would be happier to sort of base on the coin that he is on. But probably has to expect the overwhelming hunger list more. We can take a peek at that as well. Spellingbee nicely did work it out in the previous games, but symbiosis was just too much to handle. But if things go well, the Erendite, of course, can grow. Brew's Ritual, very powerful play early on. And I'm not sure if Pajabol has something to disrupt that strategy with completely. Off the Books does end up having a lot of points after a certain amount of time. That would mean allowing the Erendite to grow longer and longer. Ursine Ritual has that one heat wave, and lemons for a little bit of graveyard control, which can be sort of nice to delete a succubus from the graveyard, for example. But other than that, I think this monsters would be pretty happy for Spellingbee to go from blue coin. And Pajabol sort of could respond with either deck, maybe thinking about which if the coins were switched, then in the next game, if Pajabol would be happier to take the Ursine Ritual on blue or the Off the Books on blue, which I think that could be why we will see something like we might see Off the Books coming here from Pajabol on red coin.
I mean, I do respect Off the Books. It is extremely flexible, which I think is a very nice in this sort of tournament. Ursine Ritual does have that spicy... I believe Skellige is... No, Skellige is still in, yeah. Ursine Ritual does have the Heat Wave, which is pretty nice if you want to ban something sneakily. But other than that, it's truly a very difficult decision here. I think it could be both, but yeah, the obvious thing here that, like you said, is bringing monsters on blue for Erendite value, getting the Urn of Shadow stratagem out, hopefully thinning very quickly with Brew's Ritual, and Pajabol is just going to have to decide what he's most comfortable bringing through here to counter it. Both Skellige and Syndicate really being viable options, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that summary. I think you put it very well. And we are about to find out very soon, as we do see this card rolling here as the players are getting ready to jump into the game. And let's see what we have here. I can hear Skellige music, so that has to be one of the decks. And it indeed is. So responding with a red coin here, Pajabol chooses to go for the more graveyard oriented list, and with the Heat Wave as well, it could prove useful on something like AQ or of course Dagon, which is something that the Off the Books list does not have. So maybe this is the bigger chance for Paya to get this Ursine Ritual through or stop Spellingbee's shenanigans from completely happening.
Yeah, we also do have the Heat Wave option, so that is going to come in extremely handy if the time is right. Well, we'll see here. It can really go either way. Both hands are looking pretty nice. We see Melusine available on Payabol's end already. AQ as well as Royal Decree on Spellingbee's end. I think both players are very happy, and we're going to see a pretty quick game again.
Yep, pretty straightforward strategy here for Spellingbee. Grow the Erendite, player Wispa's Tribute, and use the Urn to trigger it, which is what we see here as the card is being tutored from Whispering Hillock. And pressed a lot of points now on Spellingbee's side of the board. Also, again, pretty similar setup where the first succubus, there's succubus in hand as well, so Spellingbee does not risk thinning both. And as you said, Tia, here is the Melusine slowly continuing to grow and potentially be resurrected a couple of times for Pajabol.
We see that Andrega Warrior coming down there, consuming the Brew's Ritual, already ahead by quite a bit of points. Everything is set up perfectly here for both players. You have the Cultist next to Melusine. She's gonna keep on giving rain, getting bigger for later rounds. And yeah, this monster list that Spellingbee's playing only has a limited way of interacting with your opponent's side of the board. So Pajabol pretty much is left unchecked here, which is going to be kind of scary if he gets his way with all his engines.
Yeah, the longer the round goes, the more powerful this self-wound list does become. Spellingbee here does decide to utilize the fog as well as the erendite to put the Melusine into the graveyard so it doesn't grow too much. And the monster list also has a squirrel available. That is something that Spellingbee could consider going for here, maybe even from Decree, but I suspect Pajabol is going to maybe give up the round fairly soon, but a squirrel could be nice to play just because it's so non-committal, and you have found your Arrakis Queen, you have found your Dagon. The only link missing sort of is the Death but perhaps it is too slow for Spellingbee to go for the squirrel play. But other than that, the game, the hand does not look super playable for Spellingbee. It's getting kind of tight. I think Spellingbee was hoping to get out there.
I mean, I did like the way he utilized his cards to get rid of Melusine. That fog with the Erendite was a beautiful play. And you are correct, Sealy, he is going for that squirrel, getting rid of the Melusine right off the bat, and immediately Pajabol is left with a totally different setup, but he is going to go with Xavier and do exactly that. He's going to get rid of something in Spellingbee's graveyard as well. I assume Erendite has left the game.
Yeah, that Echo card will not be coming back to Spellingbee's hand, which can be a really big deal later on when you have to take care of something like Knut, for example, because now there is really nothing much you can do when you're Spellingbee, and it looks like Pajabol is going to have round control. That is definitely scary for the overwhelming hunger.
Absolutely. He can abuse this position. He can go for a long round. He'll know exactly what he's looking at, but we know Spellingbee has a beautiful looking hand. Already has Dagon, AQ, Karen, even Heatwave. And we see that Fukushia being drawn this time around.
That's right. Fukushia is here. No Melusine, of course, to resurrect, as it has been taken away by the squirrel, but does allow for some room on something like Sigvald or Knut. There is that one Heatwave, of course, for Spellingbee, looking to hit the Sigvald, definitely, as there's no other way to deal with it. Maxi coming in here from Pajabol, just checking the situation of the deck. Spellingbee, on the other hand, has to decide what to do next. Will there be a Dagon, perhaps? As you might expect.
I mean, you have to be careful here.
Setup, yeah.
Yeah, the frog obviously going for carryover value. And yeah, Spellingbee did read the situation correct. This is a pass from Pajabol, but now Spellingbee needs to commit something awkward. Probably that Siegfried. I can't really see it being used for anything else.
Yeah, you're right. The Toad was fine. If Pajabol continues playing there and pushes, of course we can see that there was no Sigvald. If there was a Sigvald, the situation may be different. But for now, Spellingbee did get away without having to commit anything big right off the bat. And that Dagon is now freed up for Spellingbee. Pajabol drawing into that Heatwave. Also had the Aneromancy just in case for a Svalbard perhaps later on, but that Dagon will not be sticking on the board for too long. Arrakis Queen probably going to go on that Death Laugh again. We're going to see some Succubus action later on as well, as it's going to be kind of solitaire play here from both decks in a fairly long round 3.
We do see a Heatwave in each hand, so I'm sure both players are going to find one target they want to disrupt. I assume this might be the target Pajabol is going to go for. I would hope as much. That is a pretty nice Heatwave target, but honestly, you do have quite a few options as well here. Let's see. What is he doing?
Yeah, the Heatwave is not coming out as fast as you may think, so perhaps Pajabol is saying that it would be better to use on something else later, or just wants to do the setup. Maybe it's fine that Dagon does its thing, but Here he's sitting at 2 power. All of those pings were used from leader. Hound Snout.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, Spellingbee knows what's about to go down. He better be pretty careful here. Dagon isn't gonna survive much longer if Pajabol has his say. But he's saying, I don't want to use my heat wave though. I have one. Maybe, you don't know. And I can take out more than one target here if I really want to. So Spellingbee needs to figure out what his game plan strategy here is.
That's right. You do have the Arrakis Queen going for the Succubus now. Freeing up a potential kill here on the Dagon. Pajabol saying that this was probably exactly as he wanted. Now the Knut is online, has been damaged, and took care of the Dagon before there was time for anything else. And the heat wave can now be used on something else, like the AK.
Yeah, I think that's a very big brain move from Pajabol, having access to Heatwave still, but having gotten rid of one of the biggest targets. Of course, Karen can't really be targeted at this point with Heatwave, so I'm assuming we're gonna see that Heatwave coming down on something else like AQ.
Alright, I believe that was the heat wave on the Knut rather than the Sigvald, meaning that Sigvald can still get some Mardrums and take some self-damage before resetting himself again. That's nice for Pajabol to note, but yeah, Knut is would otherwise be resurrectable here for Pajabol if Spellingbee decides to not take care of that.
Andrega Warrior coming down there, triggering all of the Deathwish cards. Succubus becoming the engine she was meant to be. She's gonna play for quite a bit if Spellingbee can keep her in the loop. Pajabol now left with not a lot of engines at his disposal. Melusine's gone, and our Knut Sigvald combination is gone as well. So what are we left with? Svalbard?
Yep. Svalbard is still something that can be pulled from the Aneromancy, right? Was it actually played earlier?
We've seen this matchup a few times already, which is kind of confusing, to be honest.
Yeah. Don't have access to the graveyard, but I'm sure we will find out because there will be a Svalbard in this round one way or another, either from deck or from graveyard. But yeah, here comes the Detlef on Spellingbee's side of the board. AQ can create another. Then we do have, of course, the Karen and Leader Charge being the only consumers left, so also a little bit limited for Spellingbee in that regard. Here's the Aneromancy into Svalbard, so it did stay in the deck, and this Herald Houndsnout can also help ping down this last abomination, bear abomination on Pajabol's side of the board, which is really nice. Currently not going anywhere, even though it's sitting at 1 power.
I do respect the position, played on the row with Fog, so it will automatically damage, triggering the Svalbard another time. Svalbard going to be playing for a lot of points, and Heatwave finally coming down there on AQ, getting its maximum value. Alright, this is going very well here for Pajabol right now, but that Karen's gonna find value too, and it's definitely going to trigger those Succubi.
Yep, there they are, and of course Karen waiting for that last consume to eat the Succubi. Fukusia going to be resurrecting the Herald Houndsnout. Quite nice. And Leader, of course, will trigger this Svalbard one more time, meaning that these skulls should be able to, they will all explode.
They will explode. They're gonna play for quite a bit of value here. I'm just curious what Sugdrefar's right is going to pull out at this point in time. As, yeah, there's not a lot to go around anymore. This is gonna be kind of close. This is certainly not yet over for Pajabol.
what is actually the Sigdrifa's right going to be? Okay, so it has to be the priest, right? Because that one... Okay, never mind. It's the ship. There we go. There is the bloodthirst for the ship, so that had to be the most points. And then Sigvald has a little bit left. Very close, but not quite enough.
Wow. All right. So the second game goes to Spellingbee, bringing his monster list through on the second try. Pajabol played an excellent game, but it just wasn't enough this time around. So we have seen Pajabol try to take through his Skellige list twice now, and he has failed every time. Will he take it again on blue coin, or is it going to show us his syndicate list?
Let's see. Spellingbee has Imperial Formation left, which is quite the control-y list that could prove a little bit difficult for Ursine Ritual. But of course, Pajabol has to get both decks through and just has to decide which coin essentially will be better. I would still guess that Ursine Ritual might be slightly better on blue, but could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, at least now Pajabol has the option of deciding exactly which list he wants to take through against Nilfgaard on which coin, which is a little advantage on in and of itself. So he gets to take Syndicate or Skellige through on blue coin, and he might just decide that Skellige remains the blue coin list of choice. Let's see.
Seems to be the case here. Does take the Ursine on blue coin, and Spellingbee on the other hand, playing Nilfgaard, has some locks now at his disposal, has Rune Mage as well to create something useful perhaps, and Igni as well as sort of the removal for this list, the Tar removal along with Vilgefortz. So a couple of ways of dealing with these units and being able to lock something like Knut is very useful. Of course, Renfrey could also create some nice tool from the leader.
Okay. This is going to be fun. I'm glad we can see this Nilfgaard list in play here. Like you said, it does have a lot of control, and we are going to see that being used against Pajabol's list as far as it can, but it is a Renfrey list, so we aren't seeing cards like Heatwave this time around. Rather, we're going for options like Volgafort. So these cards are still going to be available in the graveyard for Pajabol to play more than once.
That's right. Also has some ways to unlock the cards like Mahakam Ale and Grimace, which is quite useful. Due to those Alba Armored Cavalries that will be coming down from Spellingbee later on. Melusine, of course, has the Veil tag, very nice, but is a target for something like Vilgefortz if she grows too tall. Squirrel exists in Spellingbee's lists, but is not currently in hand. So this Melusine, perhaps she will not get deleted. We'll see. That would be, I think, a first out of the Self-Food games that we've seen. No squirrels on any Melusines.
Yeah, poor Melusine never stands a chance. The graveyard hate is far too strong in the current meta for her to persist. And Rune Mage coming down here, which faction are we going for? It is the Nilfgaard faction.
Alright, creating another engine here for Spellingbee. Melusine does get a little bit of rain value here. Doesn't have to worry about pinging herself down either. And just a nice value bronze here for Pajabol.
Not looking too bad. Yeah, Melusine's only real fear here is Volgefortz at this moment. And yeah, right now she's not being punished. She's growing quite nicely. And if Spellingbee can't counter it with a squirrel, then it's just going to come back out again in a later round.
That's right. Slave Driver coming down here, just playing fairly non-committally, but enabling all of this flanking and utilizing the leader to armor and boost both soldiers. So they will be passively gathering points for Spellingbee. as we go.
Okay, Pajabol here looking at his deck as we speak. He has been pretty happy with committing Maxi every time so far in round 1 and setting up his draws for later. And I do respect the consistency that comes along with Maxi.
Absolutely nice card to have. The Slave Infantry, now that the Rune Breach has been damaged, actually gets a pretty respectable amount of value. Spellingbee continues to build here on the melee row. No Triss in sight, but Pajabol, of course, does not know that. Has to be a little bit careful that Spellingbee can't sneak ahead with a really powerful play. He so wishes. Pajabol, of course, does have Sigvald and Knut in hand, which is cards that Paya would not want to commit just yet. Grimace and Mahakam Ale are really there for one purpose, which is removing a lock. I think after this, Pajabol doesn't really want to play too much of the hand, but Spellingbee getting ahead on this turn, so Pajabol does have to commit something here. Meaning the Sigvald or the Knut. I mean, it would be really nice to save them, but it would feel kind of bad to waste sort of a lock remover here as well, because you will be needing them later.
Yeah, it's an awkward position Pajabol is in here. He seems to be struggling to keep ahead on blue coin. And Spellingbee does have that little bit of reach with his leader ability as well. He is more than happy to commit it because he'll be able to play Rain Free and perhaps set up something with a cooldown ability or that benefits him with every card he plays. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Spellingbee pushing here to win on even.
Yep, the Lydia is coming out. Gutting Slash is enabled very nicely here. Created that and took care of the Knut that is now in the graveyard and would have to be resurrected. As you said, things are looking a little bit spooky here for Paya. Having to use this ale on the ship that doesn't really need it, but just to get ahead. Prophet now coming down from Spellingbee, meaning that both of these two cards in Paya's hand will be locked. So the question is, what to play now, because either you play a locked Grimace or a locked Sigvald. Neither are ideal. I think it's looking pretty rough here as Spellingbee definitely is putting the pressure on. Can Paya even continue playing here because of that Prophet?
I see we also got a raid here from our fellow casters. Welcome in, guys. We are watching Pajabol and Spellingbee go off against each other. It's two previous Masters winners, so it's pretty tense. And right now, the score is neck and neck. Spellingbee needs to bring through his Nilfgaardless. Pajabol still needs to bring through his Skalligerless as well as Syndicateless. So, welcome in. You're just in time.
Yep, it is very intense over here. Pajabol bringing Ursine Ritual on blue coin. Meanwhile, Spellingbee has pushed a lot, and due to the hand of what Pajabol has currently, it's looking very difficult to play further. But going for the Sigdrifas right here to resurrect the Knut and still push ahead, saying that no, has to keep playing, will not give up this round control, and perhaps is planning on then playing a locked Grimace from hand.
Pretty awkward here for Pajabol. Spellingbee is also heading into serious commitment areas. Don't really want to play Volgaforts, as that is one of your main removal targets for later. I do still think Renfree is a great card to push out, but Spellingbee is holding on to it for now. And of course, Roderick could give you any of the golden options that you don't necessarily want yet.
Yeah, Roderick could risk getting too committal, so nice here is to spend the leader charge and choose the Renfree options. Perhaps you get the passive that boosts before you pass, could be very useful. Perhaps we get to see what was chosen. We are not entirely sure, but I'm sure it will clear up as we go.
Yeah, we will see in a second. I am pretty sure. Now, Pajabol, is he going to continue to sort of push here? He does seem to be willing to not give up the round just yet. And now even playing a Grimace. That is interesting because this Nilfgaardless has quite a few locks. and those locks are gonna find value, and Grimace is kind of wasted now. Unfortunately, he did have to play one of his locked cards. He'd rather play Grimace, I guess. But in retrospect, if you played the other card, Grimace could unlock it. So
either you go for the Triss here, which is one of your most valuable cards. It does secure this round completely for Spellingbee, and that 4-point Ramon did not look very convincing. So that is what Spellingbee does here. Nice for Paya to, I mean, not nice that you're losing on even, but at least there was some serious commitment as well from Spellingbee, because so far it was not very committal at all. But getting that Triss out perhaps gives some hope here for Pajabol. On the other hand, Ramon has been found now that it got put on the top of the deck, and of course an Ardfiend Cavalry as well. Pretty scary engine for Spellingbee to find here, along with a lock that now Pajabol cannot really do anything about.
Yeah, it's not looking very good here for Pajabol. Spellingbee just passing. He knows he has a very strong loss, say, especially with all of that removal still in hand. He also has some pretty nice engines like the light Ardfiend Cavalry. Yeah, Pajabol in a difficult position now. I guess a Neuromancy is nice to thin out some cards. Is he happy with the cards he currently has in hand, or is that going to reduce his chances of drawing into what he needs in round 3?
Yeah, I think it would be nice to keep the Neuromancy, but going for the Squirrel here, the Graveyard does not really matter here for Spellingbee. But of course, like you said, Tia, Pajabol's looking to just thin a card, hoping to find, I guess, cards like Bride. Later, Herald Houndsnout we haven't seen either. Speaking of which, there he is. But yeah, Bride is still missing here.
Yeah, I believe Melusine is still in the graveyard, right? And if that's the case, the Squirrel is going to be a problem.
Spellingbee keeping this Squirrel here. I guess going to be playing it now. Unless Spellingbee prioritizes locking the Sigvold, but then of course that gives a little bit of wiggle room for the Melusine to come out.
What are we going for here? Illusionist. Alright.
Okay, there we found out now what the leader was. It was the damage by 8 leader, and then the boost your lowest power unit to 10 is what happened there. That was Spellingbee's rent-free.
Interesting. Spellingbee in an exceptional position here. Now he has the option of using the Squirrel there on the card he just removed. And he also has Vulgaforce as well as Igni to get rid of any large target. So he doesn't even have to use the Squirrel on something like Melusine. He can just delete it later with Last Say.
Yeah, 24-point Melusine looks really juicy, but does look very juicy for a removal target. So perhaps it was the Sigvold that got deleted there instead.
I respect it. It makes sense. And it's starting to look a little bit scary here. But always not lost. Pajabol still has access to that graveyard, and he can access it if he'd like. Question is, what is he setting up here? Is he going to take it slow?
Alright, so there we see the Melusine has not been removed, and Paya knows that all of this tile removal is at Spellingbee's disposal, so instead opting for a ship and getting rain value from this Fukusia. Of course, this armor from the Drakkar is going to be tanking a bit of that armor.
A very interesting play. Yeah. I respect it. I really do respect it, because we know Igni would have just taken it out immediately. And now he is able to play around Igni as best as he can. And I'm sure he's going to be able to pull it off. He can self-damage his own targets as well. So I doubt Igni is going to play for anything more than 2 points here if Pajabol knows what he is doing.
Yep. Big plays still coming down here from Spellingbee, the second Nausicaa Sergeant. Of course, the Alba Armored Cavalry still waiting for a potential target, which probably is the Small Blood that Pajabol here is going to set up as the last play that will take place on deploy. It will be very satisfying. A lot of armor, though, tanking that damage on Spellingbee's side of the board. And here is the lock coming down on this Berserker. Now that the Small Blood be Paya's last play, so it will only go off and then it's done its job. But yeah, will be satisfying to see all of those pings, but nicely placed armor from Spellingbee here.
Okay, Pajabol is carefully calculating this. He needs to play around Igneous. That is essentially the last thing he possibly can do. Okay. He's playing into the melee row here. It's not looking good, Seely. It could be better.
Absolutely. Pajabol has made the final move here. Spellingbee, on the other hand, does have 2-point Igni, as the point gap currently is not very big, playing that out on the arranged row, while Pajabol's engines are still growing a little bit. Here comes the Vilgefortz, still leading a 1, bringing out not anything too big, but was enough here for Spellingbee to take the series.
Wow. What a game. It hurt to watch it though. I felt bad for Pajabol because he tried to bring the Scalagalus through 3 times and failed on all 3 instances. But it is what it is. You can't win them all, and Spellingbee is going through to next weekend. What a series. What a series, Seely.
Absolutely. That was definitely well played from both players, definitely. And Spellingbee had the edge here. Got that Monstercilus through, which was looking a little bit worrisome for Spellingbee. And I think once that was through, only the Nilfgaard left. That's when Spellingbee was fairly happy. And Pajabol then, on the other hand, had 2 sort of decks that definitely favor red coin. Like, had to take the Ursine Ritual from blue, but would probably still have a red coin preference, so that's always a little bit difficult to pull off. But huge congratulations, Spellingbee. It was really nice to watch this series with 2 Masters players battling it out against each other.
Yeah, and for those of you who did miss it, essentially this is more or less what we were going through. Because we only have 2 big Gwent tournaments this year. This will be the mid-season one. We had 4 groups. These were all the players competing. You could watch them on any casts across Twitch. And we thank you for joining us and doing so. After that, we do have the, let's see, we do have the bracket here. Yeah, we did have that. Lionheart and Arya supplied us with a very nice looking bracket here. This basically shows you how it worked. The winners advanced to next weekend. We will be seeing them on CDPR's channel live next weekend. Don't miss out on that. And unfortunately now, Pajabol was eliminated here in the final tiebreaker, which we just casted. So we have 8 players going through to the big tournament happening next weekend. Yeah, Seely, thank you so much for casting with me. I really appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to tell the community? Where can they find you?
Well, thank you very much, Tia. It was very fun casting with you this weekend. And yeah, next week will be the big one. So I hope to see you all there. We do stream on Twitch. Unfortunately, I'm very busy with university currently. But you can find me at twitch.tv/Seely with 2 C's.